A very good evening to you and welcome to News Night here on Metro TV Live. Master this here at Rage in Accra, the Queer Boy in my studio. I am Bright, and I'll proceed. I'm coming up in the next hour. Government given 7-day ultimatum to grant a 20% cost of living allowance or have 63 public service institutions of 27,000 workers strike indefinitely. We will bring you a response from government. Parents and education advocates demand closure of senior high schools to guarantee safety and well-being of students in the wake of ongoing strike by teachers and reported cases of food shortage. Commercial motorcycle riders besiege a Wutu Breku District Police Command demanding for a 22-year-old suspect arrested for the alleged gruesome murder of the colleague to avenge his death. And on the international front, Angola's longest-serving leader, Jose Eduardo dos Santos, who led Marxist Angola to chronic capitalism, dies at the age of 79. And thanks for joining us here tonight on the news. Now, the Public Service Workers Union of TUC have added their voice to calls for the 20% conditions of service allowance. According to the national chairman of the 65 public institution, Ken Mawaku, government has 7 days to respond to their demands, else risk another strike.
Aggrieved Management Committee executives of the 65 entities converged in Accra to determine their next line of action following complaints from their members on prevailing harsh economic conditions. The union has decided to put to vote a motion on whether or not to lay down their tools as a result of the situation. The 65 public sector institutions, after deliberations, settled on a 20% cost of living allowance from the government. Chairman of the Public Service Workers Union, Mawaku, says government has 7 days to respond to their demands, else be responsible for another strike action featuring over 20,000 public workers.
As we see, these are 65 public institutions, and they are here with all the regional chairmen. And what they say is what we have to do as leaders. So we have given government, from Tuesday, 7 days per the law to do the needful.
General Secretary of the Union, Bernard J, says the high cost of living and inflation has made life unbearable for public service workers across the country.
The plight of workers due to the economic challenges that are from increasing prices of food, increasing fuel prices and general cost of living, the erosions in their salaries due to inflation, and have decided that government should grant the COLA as requested in the letter that was subsequently submitted to government. That 20% COLA should be granted to reduce the burden that is currently on the poor public sector workers.
The demand from the Public Service Workers Union comes 4 days after 4 teacher unions declared an indefinite nationwide strike over demand for the payment of the cost of living allowance.
Let's now bring in a snapshot of labor agitations in demand of 20% cost of living allowance. Let's start with those who are already striking. We have Ghana National Association of Teachers, NAT, National Association of Graduate Teachers, NAGRAT, Teachers and Educational Workers Union, TEU, Coalition of Concerned Teachers, CCT, and those who have already threatened to go on strike are Union of Professional Nurses and Midwives, Ghana, UPNMG, Public Utility Workers Union, Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association, all threatening to go on strike. So the Ministry of Employment and Labour Relations has set Tuesday, July 12, 2022, to hold a second meeting with organized labour over the agitation for a 20% cost of living allowance. Now, and the meeting will specifically be to negotiate the demands of organized labor. A statement issued by the ministry said it convened an emergency meeting on Friday, July 8th, 2022, where the agreement was reached to reconvene next week. The emergency meeting involved the Ministers of Employment, Finance and Education on one hand and organized labor on another hand. The government indicated that it had taken note of the demand by organized labor for a 20% cost of living allowance in the light of the current economic conditions prevailing in the country, and reiterated its appeal to striking teacher unions to call off their industrial action. The 4 teacher unions are currently on strike over the payment of their cost of living allowance, and they have vowed to continue on with industrial action despite government's persuasion. The Deputy Employment and Labour Relations Minister, Bride Reko Brobe, earlier this week said, although the 4 teacher unions demanding the payment of the cost of living allowance have legitimate concerns, the timing is problematic. He said the current economic conditions are dire, hence the teachers and all others with concerns should bear with the government. We have now been joined on Zoom by Labour expert Austin Gami for more on this. Now, good evening and welcome to News Night. Are the workers justified in their request? Austin, if you can hear me, I'm asking once again. Are the workers justified in their request?
Well, I honestly empathize with them and the employer as well. So clearly, there is a problem that must be resolved and should have been resolved early on. That notwithstanding, I think that it's a welcome news. The minister has issued a request for them to come to table again on the 12th. Hopefully, they might go discussing the issues and reaching an agreement that will satisfy both sides.
What should government do?
Well, there is a risk involved in giving or not giving. If you give the 20%, you're going to drag yourselves back into some strange further inflation, and the circumstance will be very problematic. If you don't give it, the truth is that the workers are also facing crunching financial circumstances beyond their control. Whether it's given or not, the inflation will keep rising until otherwise, and therefore something will have to give way. What should give way? The risk must be attended to. If we give, these are the consequences. If we don't give, these are the consequences. They have to wait and see which one is appropriate, and that is the one they must take. But for now, use of language is very critical. Those either in National Labour Commission or the Ministries of Employment and all other players in the system, including communicators, will have to be advised not to inflame further passion, because language is very critical in industrial relations.
Austin, kindly turn on your camera so we see your face on our screens. And whilst you do that, I want to find out, is strike the only solution for these aggrieved workers? Are there no other alternatives for them to apply?
Sure. That is the reason why there should have been a proactive approach to this. That notwithstanding, this is not a time to be looking for a blame game. There could be alternative. I think if I were chairing this meeting, if assuming that you can't give 20% because of circumstances beyond their control, and there is no room for flexibility, assuming they will come down even to 10%, still, is there flexibility? Can we withstand the whirlwind of the economic circumstance in which we find ourselves? Is there any other alternative? Like you rightly said, yes, I think so. We have a tax threshold. Everybody pay as you earn. So there can be a lifting of the tax threshold, spending maybe some 3, 4, maybe maximum 5%, I don't know, to enable everybody, both private and public, to have some cushioning, because everybody is suffering anyway. Big men, small men, everybody is suffering. So therefore, it is proper that some mechanism is devised. So it calls for brainstorming, it calls for sharing of proper information, and it calls for generation of various other options that are on the table and look at the risk factors involved and to be able to reach consensus. The workers are not oblivious of the fact that we are in a very dire situation. They are not oblivious. They have notable people in the system, and I saw my friends who were speaking there. So clearly they go, the tax is one, it can be on the table. That's why you don't go and borrow money to pay and pay interest on it. But if they should increase the, COLA, as the case may be, surely they will have to borrow money to pay it. They will have to pay interest on it. It will also carry the inflation to another level. So the best thing to do now is to look at other options that are available. And I think there are other options on the table.
All right. Thank you so much for turning this here tonight on the news. And Austin Gummy is a labor expert. Away from that, but still staying on matters on strike. And now to the northern region, where the industrial action declared by the teacher unions is having a toll on parents and children up north. School children who should have been in school are either selling on the streets or helping parents at their workplaces. There is more in the following report.
The industrial action by the teacher unions over the costs of living allowance is having a negative impact on children and parents in the northern region. Many school children in the region have turned to street hawkers due to the industrial action by the teacher unions across the country. For fear of the safety of their wards, some parents are now going with their kids to their work sites.
The government to let the teachers go back to the school, so that it will help the children and the family and the parents too. Because when the strikes come, I bring them to my shop. It's not good me to bring them to the shop.
Bring them to my shop because I don't want him to be roaming about.
Metro News also spoke to some school children doing petty trading on the streets of Tamale, and they say they have no option than to sell on the streets because their teachers are on strike. Some of the children called on government to meet the demand of the teachers so they can come back to the classrooms.
Said the teachers have gone to strike, so that's why we are playing. So we are begging Nana to pay them so that they will come again. Continue teaching us.
Now, President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has charged the newly sworn-in board members of the National Labour Commission to effectively engage organized labour in order to promote peace on the industrial front. He acknowledged the challenging economic times and charged the team to be tactful in their dealings to encourage investment. And also, a research fellow with the Africa Education Watch, Divine Pair, has urged the government to act immediately to release money for the food supply in various secondary institutions that have been reportedly affected by a shortage of food. Earlier, reports indicated that a lamentation by a parent of the awards being fed with porridge without bread and also sugar and kinky without fish.
There appears to be some serious food shortage in some senior high schools in Ghana, including Ghana National College, Adisadel College, and St. Augustine, as parents of affected students in the various second cycle institutions say their wards are inadequately fed. The shortage is blamed on the school's inability to get some food components to serve the children the required plates of nutritive value. As a result, some Parent-Teachers Association of affected schools are calling for immediate government intervention. Among others, they demand school authorities to grant their wards clearance to return home until the matter is addressed. On the back of the prevailing challenge, Divine Akpe, a research fellow, Africa Education Watch, has urged the government to act as fast as possible to release money for food supply. He added the children can remain in school due to the fast approaching WASSCE exams, so they can have ample time to study.
This issue has been in the domain for a very long time now, and it's not the first time we are recording instances of food shortage in our schools, and it's quite unfortunate. It's one of the gaps that we have identified to be characterized the free senior high school implementation. it's one of the gaps that, because of the large numbers that are enrolled, we are witnessing occasional issues of food shortages in our school. And we believe this is mostly because government has not been releasing money to the Ministry of Education to be paid to the buffer stock, national buffer stock, so that they can pay the money to the food suppliers. So the problem is more about money to be paid to the food suppliers. Other than that, there will be regular supply of food in the various schools. So that's where the issue has to be addressed to. Government will need to find a sustainable way of providing money to the national buffer stock so that they can also pay the food suppliers on time. Other than that, we're going to be seeing recurrence of this issue.
He also shared his concerns on the teacher strike that the teachers' unions should be flexible with their demands to enhance a smooth negotiation between them and the government for academic work to continue.
Now, let's also stay more on the striking teachers, what is happening across some secondary schools here in Ghana. And we are joined on phone by Kwesi Kwante, who is a public relations officer of the Ghana Education Service, for a further interaction. Hello and welcome, Kwesi. So what is your assessment of reports of food shortages across schools in Ghana?
Can you come again? Good evening.
Great. I want to find out your assessment of reports of food shortage across schools in Ghana.
So there is a system for filing reports that we have with the schools. As I speak with you officially, the ministry have not had such any complaint with regards to food shortages. The only situation that could be possible is a caution against a possible challenge with regards to some of the supplies of some selected food items. For those ones, it has always been so in the system. But of course, we are working very hard to avert it. Recently, the Minister for Education, Dr. Yause Duchum, met with all food suppliers across the country, where he announced to them an alternative source of arrangement being done with some selected banks. ADB, for instance, is one, so that as and when they supply the food staffs to the various schools, quickly the banks pays them, once government later on pays the bank. So that is an enhanced model that we are working on to avert situations of delays in payment and what have you. But having said that, the delays in payment, as I speak with you, have not really had any impact with regards to supplies. Of course, we do admit that there are possibilities of delays in supply with sometimes some of the selected food items. If you look at the list of food items that also be supplied by the buffer stock, for instance, there's around, I think, 17 or 18 food items. So it is possible that there could be delay in one or two of them, sometimes due to transportational delays, sometimes even due to logistics delay. Supplier may take the food, the headmaster may tell the person that, well, we don't have enough storage to take it back and what have you. These are all possibilities, but generally, with over almost the 900 secondary schools that we have, with about 1.5 million students that we have, we have not had formally such level of complaints that there are food shortages. But of course, having said that, let me also admit that it is our responsibility as a ministry that when there are no food in any of the schools, quickly, as soon as we get a list of the schools, we are ever ready to go in to supply such schools with food. But of course, a lot of times, some of these media reports, I mean, you will recall just some few months ago, reports were that schools like Presec, schools like Okuapeman, and I think one of the schools in the central region, there were no foods. The minister paid and announced to a school like Presec, there was food. When our team went to a school like Okuapeman, for instance, there were food. And I think central region, well, of course, there have also been genuine instances where some of the selected food items in terms of the supply have delayed. For instance, there was a time in past where a school like Vantaman lacked flour. Quickly, it was brought to our attention through some of these your media outlets, and quickly we intervened and supplied. So yes, when it comes to payment model and arrangement that has been made for them, admit with the delays, but we met the suppliers this week, and the arrangement was that whilst we work on a sustainable payment regime for them, they continue to supply. So for now, we do not envisage such how do you call it, shortage.
All right. And in view of the ongoing strike, there are calls for senior high schools to be closed. Is this an issue to be considered?
Well, I mean, if you read I'll just refer you to the press statement that was issued out by the Ghana Education Service, where they made an interim arrangement for these students ahead of an engagement between the government side and the teacher unions. I mean, if you recall, just this afternoon, a statement that was signed by the Minister for Employment and Labour Relations, Honorable Ignatius Bafo, were clearly spelled out a clear roadmap where government had actually escalated their engagement relative to the CULA, that is the cost of living allowance, the 20%, which was being demanded by the teacher unions, to a broader scope, which now includes organized labor. And the expectation is that just this coming Tuesday, government sits down with organized labor and begin negotiation with regards to their demands for the 20% in cost of living allowance. So by it is implied that before you negotiate, I mean, our laws are clear. You may have to call off a strike before you are able to negotiate. So I do not see why we may have to necessarily jump ahead of the gun, whilst we know our teachers knows the very laws of the land, and the expectation is that before Tuesday, ahead of the negotiation, we may hear from them. So I do not see this cause of closing down the schools, how sustainable they could be, especially with the kind of progress that has been talked by between the ministry and the unions and even organized labor at large.
All right. Thank you for your time with us here tonight. And Kwesi Kwanten is the Public Relations Officer of the Ghana Education Service. Let's now go back to our earlier story where President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has charged the newly sworn-in board members of the National Labour Commission to effectively engage organized labour in order to promote peace on the industrial front.
I'm expecting that we will continue the tradition of effective engagement that the Commission has already established and help promote industrial peace in our country. Industrial peace is one of the key, and harmony are one of the key elements of a viable and attractive investment climate. And that should be a concern of all of us, how to position our country in such a way as to attract investment, domestic as well as foreign. And it's best achieved when we see that the labor front is calm and it is working. We have a big responsibility. As I say, the circumstances in which we find ourselves in the country has, if anything, heightened the responsibilities that are on your shoulders. But there's a good reason why you've been chosen, both by government and by organized labor and also by the employers. They have a clear idea of your capacity.
And you earlier heard from the PRO for the Ghana Education, the Ministry of Education, Kwesi Kwanten, also talking about the same issue there, the strike of teachers and how they might just go back to the classroom next week. Still to come here on the news, commercial motorcycle riders besiege Wutu Breko District Police Command demanding for a 22-year-old suspect arrested for the alleged gruesome murder of their colleague to avenge his death. Stay with us.
Obi a woni mo moto no ishia e moto no se moto no eba no hu se na nja me ba no na eka moto no na nipa na won fa me ba no won mo na ti moto no sa won mo de ba ahwehwa na.
Welcome back. Now, a 22-year-old Mawina Francis has been arrested by police in Ewutu Breko in the Ewutu Senior District of the Central Region over the murder of an Okada rider for suspected money rituals. Police is combing the area for the arrest of his accomplice. Central Regional Correspondent Akoshiado has more in the report.
Now, Jam. 18-year-old Okada rider suddenly went missing for days. It was later found out that the suspect, who is currently in the grips of the police, Maunya Francis, and his accomplice, who is at large, had hired the services of the deceased shortly before his disappearance. During a research, some parts of the victim's motorbike were found in a bush in between Ewutu Bontrasi and Mfadring, but with no traces of him and the bike. It was later revealed that the suspect, Maunya, and his accomplice had confided in some close friends that they were going to get rich soon and ride in supercars, even if it had to take human sacrifice. Upon that tip-off, police initiated investigations leading to the arrest of the suspect, who had also suddenly disappeared from the Bontrasi area around the same period the deceased had gone missing. After the arrest of the suspect, who has since opened up about the murder, some residents of the area, mostly Okada riders, besieged the Ewutu Breku District Police Command, demanding for the suspect so they could make him pay for his offense by killing him too. It took several rounds of warning shots by the police to disperse the agitated crowd.
So I'm gonna live baby. Na baby no money fire no. Obi a only moto no. Ishia a moto no say moto no eba. No who say na nja me ba no na eka moto no. Na nipa na won fa me ba no. Ono mo na ti moto no sa won mo de ba. Ahwehwa na bepim. Ende ya ndura kra na egusu hwehwe no.
Meanwhile, Okada riders in the Ewutu area have called on the police to beef up security measures to ensure their protection against criminals. Some of them spoke to Metro News.
According to a statement by the Food and Drugs Authority, the East Lagoon branch of Mawaku fast food is set to be reopened following allegations of food poisoning. According to a statement issued on Friday, the decision follows the verification and inspection of the facility to ascertain the level of implementation of corrective prevention actions. The Food and Drugs Authority hereby lifts the suspension of catering services placed on your facility at East Lagoon. The statement noted.
A statement issued on Friday by the Food and Drugs Authority explained that the reopening of the East Lagoon branch of the Mawaku fast food eatery follows the authority's satisfaction with the company's implementation of corrective prevention actions. Earlier this year, the Mawaku food franchise trended on social media after several Twitter users complained of being served contaminated food, resulting in food poisoning. This led to the Food and Drugs Authority to close down the restaurant's East Lagoon and Abelempe branches after the authority tweeted, "We have closed down the restaurant and together with other relevant agencies started investigations." The East Lagoon branch where the alleged food poisoning occurred was shut down by the FDA, with the authority providing corrective prevention actions for the eatery to implement. 2 months on, the FDA says the eatery has satisfied all requirements. As such, the East Lagoon branch of Mawaku is expected to be reopened soon to customers. However, the authority says it will be conducting follow-up inspections to ensure full compliance to the Code of Hygiene Practices.
I'll start bringing more news here this evening. Now, work progresses on the portions of Jukwachifu Prasu Road destroyed by downpour earlier in June. It is to fix the affected parts permanently. Meanwhile, residents whose houses were inundated with floodwaters say they are yet to receive any support. Central Regional Correspondent Akwasiado has more in the following reports.
A heavy downpour on 18th June 2022 resulted to the washing away of a portion of the Jukwachifu Prasu Road, heavily affecting transportation on the stretch that leads to one of Ghana's widely known tourist site, the Kakum National Park. Weeks later, a visit to the site by Metro News revealed that construction works to have the road permanently restored are progressing steadily. With the work done so far, the only major activity left is the bitumen surfacing of the affected spot, which is expected to be done soon as gathered. The Surori River, which overflowed its banks leading to the destruction of the road and flooding of nearby houses, is also being dredged to prevent the occurrence of any such incident, as even March rains are expected in the days ahead. Assemblyman for Jukwa West Electoral Area, Isaac Mensah Sr., spoke to Metro News.
Now, the contractor is done with the permanent reinstatement work on the Jukwa Bridge. Currently, they are now doing drainage system to allow the river to get its path so that it can penetrate under the bridge. The engineers informed us that it was through the sound that has filled the river banks. So when it rains, the river doesn't get its path. So now they are using excavator to do proper drainage so that it will prevent unforeseen flood.
It happens to be the very first time the Surori River is being dredged, even though there's been several historic overflow of its banks. For these residents of Jukwa, they believe that dredging works would help solve the periodic floodings in the area.
I'm very, very disappointed in them. I'm very, very disappointed that such thing happening to a citizen of the country. And as a home minister and NADMO coordinator, you were here, you've seen everything. And if no response from government, it's almost 2 weeks to 3 weeks now, but we've not heard anything from them. But so actually, I'm really disappointed in them.
On the back of this, the Jukwa West Assemblyman, Isaac Mensah Sr., is calling authorities to come to the aid of the victims just so their plights will be mitigated.
This privilege to appeal to the Central Regional Minister as well as the Dandawo Director for Central Region that they should come to Jukwa and also bring us some items so that those people who lost their properties can get something to also replace what they...
Let's now talk about some health issues here, as the Ghana Health Service has confirmed the presence of 2 suspected cases of Marburg virus disease in Ghana. It said the cases were found in the Ashanti region. A statement from the health authorities said the disease was suspected following the identification of 2 persons who met the case definition for an acute hemorrhagic fever in 2 different locations in the Ashanti region. Blood samples were sent to the Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research. Preliminary results suggest that the infection is due to the Marburg virus. According to the Ghana Health Service, no new cases have been reported. However, 34 contacts linked to the initial 2 cases have been traced and are currently under quarantine. So let's bring you more update on what exactly is happening in Ghana concerning the outbreak of the new disease here. And on your screen it says Marburg virus affects both human and non-human primate. Now it is transmitted through direct contact with body fluids, blood and other discharges from the affected person or animal. The incubation period for the disease is 2 to 21 days. Treatment is symptomatic. There is currently no vaccine available. And some symptoms here says fever, bloody diarrhea, bleeding from gums, bleeding into the skin, bleeding into eyes, and bloody urine. And so the general public is admitted and told to be extra careful as you go out there to apply your trade. You're still watching us live here on this night here on Metro TV. A quick time will come back. Western Tech will be here. Good business news. Stay with us.
News Night live on Metro TV. My name is Winston Taki. And now to our first business story. The agri sector grew by 5.6%. Even with that, the local subsector has not been able to meet local demands.
Agriculture is one of the important contributors to the country's export earnings and a major source of income for a majority of the population in the country. Rice is one of the major food staples. However, due to the increased domestic consumption, which is exceeding the domestic production, Ghana imports 66% of rice consumed. Hence, the economic cost of depending on imported rice is high and on the rise. Other major cash crops of the country include cocoa, oil, pineapple, tomatoes, and fresh vegetables. As the country is emerging with a large number of middle-class income families, the number of consumers demanding high-quality fruits and vegetables is increasing in the country. It is estimated that the domestic vegetable market in the country is growing at 10% per year. Tomatoes, onion, and pepper are the most important vegetables in the country. The demand for fresh fruits, such as pineapples, is very high, with mostly intended for export, traditional domestic markets, supermarkets, and fruit processing. There is also a growing demand for fresh fruits for processing and juice for both local consumption and exports. In 2018 and 2019, Ghana's agriculture output grew, driven largely by government policy and expenditure. According to the Ghana Statistical Service, in the third quarter of 2019, agriculture grew by 5.5% year-over-year, outpacing the same year's general non-oil GDP growth. Industrialization and productivity improvement programs are expected to increase the output of the agriculture sector, create jobs, and encourage greater participation by the private sector.
Consumers all over the world have become more quality conscious. Hence, there has been an increased customer demand for higher quality services. According to the president of the Chartered Institute of Marketing Ghana, Dr. Daniel Kesa, this has the potential to transform the hospitality industry.
We are expanding the customer satisfaction index that we did for banking last year to cover other 3 areas, including hotels. Is that okay? So at the end of getting to the end of the year, we will hopefully outdoor a customer satisfaction index to cover hotels, to cover insurance companies, to cover banking, to cover tertiary business schools, and to cover hospitality generally. Okay, when we put out this report, customers will be empowered to know which hotels or which institutions are performing best in terms of customer satisfaction. To take it to tourism, if your service quality is good, tourists will definitely be attracted to you, be they domestic tourists or international tourists. As a marketing institute, had already started this agenda long ago of putting marketing ahead of everything that organizations do within.
The head of marketing and operations for Appointed Time Printing Limited, Charles Edu, has commended government's initiative of contracting local printing companies to print textbooks for the newly introduced curriculum for basic schools. The initiative, he believes, will boost the businesses of local printing industry.
2019 introduced a new curriculum for basic schools in the country, but for 3 years, schools are yet to receive corresponding textbooks for studies. In May this year, an announcement was made of how local printing companies have been contracted through procurement processes to start printing textbooks for basic schools across the country. Head of Marketing and Operations for Appointed Time Printing Limited, Charles Ado, noted that about 300,000 out of the estimated 750,000 copies of the science textbooks they were contracted to print are ready and have been distributed to the regional directorates of the Ghana Education Service.
So, Appointed Time Printing is handling only sciences. We are handling the science subjects. We are through with about 50% of it. Roughly speaking, about 300,000 or so books, so far been done. And so, in all, about 750,000 books we are supposed to do. We are halfway through our production. And like I said, we are bent on completing it way ahead on schedule.
He also noted that the move by government to print the textbooks locally will prove that mass printing jobs can be done by printing companies in the country.
I think for local printers, it's a case study, it's a test case for us. I mean, we needed to make a point that jobs such as this can be handled locally. And so when government decided that they intend printing these textbooks locally, it was a wake-up call for all of us. For us as a company, huge investments have been made towards this.
Charles Addo hinted that more printing contracts should be given to local companies as it will expand the printing industry.
For me, I would love to see 100% production done in this country, and I believe all the players will do as well, because then it will give us the opportunity to expand the industry, give individual companies the opportunity to expand their operations.
Head of Marketing and Operations at Appointed Time Printing disclosed that the company has the capacity and resources to undertake any future mass.
That's all for business here on Newsnight. My name is Winston Taki. Sports is up next after this break. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. My name is Phil John Quarter, and it's time for sports. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration has denied media report that he has taken the responsibility to take supporters to the 2022 World Cup. According to a release here in Accra, Kempon Travel and Tour is the sole agency for the job.
Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration has dismissed reports that it is facilitating the airlifting of supporters to Qatar for 2022 World Cup. The ministry, in a statement issued in the nation's capital, said it is not making any such move and that anyone who purports to have such authorization from the government is engaging in the act of criminality. The ministry established that Kempon Travel and Tours remains the only agency with the full approval of the government through the Ministry of Youth and Sports to undertake travel and accommodation arrangements for Ghanaians who would want to share in the sporting festival in Qatar. It urged the interested public, especially football fans, to engage Kempon Travel and Tour and take up their incredible offer, which was launched by the Travel and Tour Agency at an impressive ceremony at the Accra International Conference Center. During the launch, all stakeholders, including officials from the CBG, Qatar Airline, the Ghana Police Service, Sports Writers Association of Ghana, Sports Ministry, Ghana Supporters Union, and government officials.
Let it be stated emphatically the support of the Ministry of Youth and Sports to Kempon and his team. We are convinced and believe that at this moment in this country, he is the right person to deliver this job to the satisfaction of the people of Ghana.
The attention of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration has been drawn to news headline, Ghana Mission in Qatar assures fans of support. Published by a section of the media, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration wishes to categorically state that it has not established ties with Ms. Harriet Jemfua, who purports to the public relations consultant of the Ghana Mission in Qatar, and cautions the general public.
There you have it for sports. My name is Phil John Quarter. Back to Bright for the rest of the news.
All right, thank you, Phil John Quarter. Up next is news on showbiz. Former Speaker of Parliament, Professor Aaron Michael Quay, is peeved about the way Twi language is used as voiceovers in promoting foreign content on Ghanaian television and is calling for a stop to it.
About the denigration of local languages has taken center stage once again, this time coming from former Speaker of Parliament, Professor Aaron Michael Quay. The statesman is peeved about the way the Twi language is used as voiceovers to promote foreign content on Ghanaian televisions. According to him, it does not augur well for the culture and leaves him worried about the way the foreign values are promoted at the expense of the local ones. I beg our actors and and scriptwriters to come out with Ghanaian films. I get sick anytime I hear Twi words or Gan words push through some European and Asian lips. The practice should be stopped if we should develop as a people, he said. He made these comments at the inaugural memorial lecture of Ochiniheba Dr. Jones Akwesi Amuakwata Oforiata at the University of Ghana. Professor Okwei believes the Ghanaian entertainment industry is giving too much mileage to European and Asian content, which leaves him wondering what may be left of the indigenous assets. These are the things that unmake a nation. It can never happen in Malaysia. It can never happen in India. It can never happen in any of the Asian countries, he added. He wants producers in the film industry to make a conscious effort to develop homegrown content to propagate the values of society.
And also, Nicki Minaj's husband has been sentenced to a year of home detention for failing to register as a sex offender. Now, the 44-year-old was required to inform authorities when he moved due to an attempted rape conviction from 1995. But he admitted failing to do this when he moved to California with Nicki Minaj back in 2019. He's now been sentenced and fined $55,000 according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. In the hours after the sentencing, Nicki Minaj posted a picture on Instagram of her husband and son. Let's now shift our focus to the international front. And here in Africa, Angola's former president Jose Eduardo dos Santos has died. He died in a Barcelona clinic where he was hospitalized in June, more than 5 years after he left power in May 2017. Jose Eduardo dos Santos ruled Angola for 38 years with iron fist, but his imprint did not survive his departure. When he came to power in 1979, Angola had been on the throes of civil war for 4 years, following its independence from Portugal. Outside his borders, his longevity has allowed him to establish himself as a political pillar in the region, where he was a powerful supporter of Congolese President Joseph Kabila. His neighbor. Against all odds, Mr. Dos Santos has managed to hold on to power despite the challenge of war and election. And news just coming indicates that U.S. President Joe Biden has signed an executive order that his administration says will help secure access to abortion and reproductive health services in the U.S. 2 weeks after the country's top court overturned the constitutional right to the procedure nationwide. Now, Biden has faced mounting pressure, including from within his own Democratic Party, to take action to defend abortion rights following the overturning of the Supreme Court landmark 1973 Roe versus Wade decision on June 24. And that's it for the news here. A quick relook of our top stories. Government giving 7-day ultimatum to grant a 20% cost of living allowance or have 63 public service institutions of 27,000 workers strike indefinitely. Parents and education advocates demand closure of senior high schools to guarantee safety and well-being of students in the wake of ongoing strike by teachers and reported cases of food shortage. Commercial motorcycle riders besiege Ewutu Breku District Police Command demanding for a 22-year-old suspect arrested for the alleged gruesome murder of their colleague to avenge his death. And on the international front, Angola's longest-serving leader, Jose Eduardo dos Santos, who led Marxist Angola to crony capitalism, dies at the age of 79. Thank you so much for watching from Mathusia at Regional Kravi, Kriya Boy Mas Studio, and Bright, Nanakosi Amini. Have a good evening and a great weekend. Bye.